Ruth, you'll have seen the title, so I won't even build to it. I am of the mindset that this character was being written as Lesbian in Marky Mark G's run on this title. Now that sort of declaration, or supposed theory, is the exact type of nonsense I see on social media and fucking hate. When people are stressing their own idea and twisting scenes and overlooking things that say the opposite, and it is always shite like this: X is gay, or Y is Jewish coded. So up front, I will say this character is not a lesbian. She is heterosexual. She has never been presented as an actual lesbian, and every run after this goes the other way. Michael Brian Benson will have a shag legitimately every non-married man she is on the Avengers with. What we have here is a reading of what might have been intended, or what might be looking too hard into it, or what might even be my autistic brain picking up on something that wasn't meant to be the idea being communicated. This is issue 17. It is by writer Marky Mark J and artist Carmine Falcone. And this is a nice splash page, actually. Jennifer Drew sewing a costume. This is the first part of a two-part tale that is, in my opinion, entirely a metaphor for Jennifer Drew's sexual orientation. I will also confess I don't really feel that happy talking about it because it feels cringeworthy. To some people, no matter how much evidence I am going to provide, my take is going to be put right next to the people who want Robert to bum Superboy in a hospital utility closet in the middle of a supervillain attack. Here is a subplot tease that goes nowhere, not mentioned again. A mentor figure has mysteriously vanished. He doesn't appear again until the final issue of the series. Right, so gay Spider-Girl, gay Jennifer Drew. It's not this story alone that suggests that. This is one of the larger examples of what I will call evidence. But throughout all 11 of Marky Mark G's issues, there are constant things pointing towards it. In both the other two issues I have already reviewed from this run, I have sidestepped it, but pointed out scenes that go with it while not revealing what I am talking about. Marky Mark J's very first issue opens with her and her boyfriend, Jeremy Hunt, and he is thinking how Jennifer is always leaving him hanging or turning away and going off as Spider-Girl whenever he is trying to turn up the romance. This is, honest to God, not the only example of that. Every single scene they share in the run is that happening. In issue 10, we open with them sat on a beach together, and Jennifer is again trying to push Jeremy back. He is trying to kiss her, and she is like, "No, Jeremy, not now. Have your lips healed after the needle sewed them together?" Then, as they kiss, Jennifer immediately finds an excuse to leave and go off as Spider-Girl. Now, don't get me wrong, I am aware that the idea at play is that Jennifer Drew is not as socially developed as the rest of us. She lived in isolation. She didn't have anything close to a normal upbringing. And then she was a weapon for Hydra. Her missing obvious cues and not understanding the romance between herself and Jeremy is easily applicable to that idea. That is what is canon. That Jeremy's one-sided relationship with her was because Jennifer wasn't really aware enough of how couples act to actually be a romantic partner. But in issue 10, she leaves a beach date to spend the whole issue chasing after another girl. Travelling community moth. She is desperate to connect with travelling community moth. She wants to be friends with travelling community moth. Again, just like how I dispelled my reading of the romance, I'll do the same here. On paper, the idea is that she thinks travelling community moth might be like her. She might be another insect, DNA woman, and that is why she is keen on befriending her. Now, before I get back to the issue we're actually looking at, I'll also point out this. When she goes back to Jeremy on the beach, and the mood is completely dead, something else we get tons of in this run is Jennifer Drew thinking to herself that no one understands her and that nobody knows what it's like to be different. She thinks this to herself multiple times in every issue, and it means a lot more when you consider the idea she is a lesbian. I'm only on page 3. Trying to balance this story with all the gigantic examples of circumstantial proof I have is not easy. I don't know where to begin or where to mention what. There's still more to travelling community moth that leads us to that lesbian direction. And we're not done with Jeremy yet. By this point the book is, but we're not. Here she is even sabotaging other people's straight relationships in the area. The other thing to talk about is here. I will do this in reverse though. I will lead with the canon explanation this time. I want to approach this as fair and unbiased as possible. I am not trying to convert you. Spider-Girl has pheromones. The exact effect of them varies from writer to writer, but the two consistent readings are that it makes people fear her, or specifically, it makes women fear her. To know her is to fear her. That is the tagline from some of the covers. For this run, women's intrinsic fear of her is something that Jennifer is often thinking of and voicing internally as, why don't girls like me? Or, I wish I could make relationships with women. I haven't presented the actual explanation first. It makes it seem a lot less strong a point. But you would be surprised how much of this run is about Jennifer Drew wanting to be able to develop bonds with women. This brings us to Lindsay McCabe, Jennifer Drew's would-be girlfriend, if you can buy into anything of what I'm saying. She isn't in this issue much. She only appears in 3 panels. Well, this is the one woman that Spider-Girl's pheromones don't seem to affect. Lindsay is friendly to her, and I will explain Lindsay since she is quite integral to this whole discussion. We and Jennifer met Lindsay in issue 14, and for the sake of brevity, they instantly connect. As said, she is the only woman Jennifer has met who isn't repulsed by her. No explanation is ever given for this, by the way. Not in this run, at least. I'm sure we can just go with what Christopher Clairvoyant would say, which is, Lindsay is a heterosexual badass mercenary bar brawler who can outdrink Wolfman easily. So why would she be afraid of Spider-Girl? In the same issue as Lindsay's debut, Jeremy Hunt meets another woman. Someone more forthcoming and feminine than Jennifer. And this is obviously driving a further wedge into Jeremy's relationship with Jennifer, which was already just hanging on. Anyway, they broke up in the previous issue. Jeremy left Jennifer, and that is quite interesting as a scene, because, again, you can just see that Jennifer isn't really invested in their relationship at all. We also see him leave with his new bird. Issue 19, Jennifer and Lindsay. If you are looking for meaningful Jennifer and Lindsay lesbian ship suggestion, that issue is where you get several pages of that. Now this next bit is fucking enormous ammunition for my gay gun. Jennifer goes to a club and she wants to... I won't bury the lead again. The explanation is that she is taking a pill to stop her pheromones from acting. She has gone to a club, a singles bar, and she exclusively wants to attract women. She wants women to become her friends. What we have is a fucking entire page that, if you read with the subtext, she is being written as a lesbian, you will think, fucking hell, how did nobody ever pick up on this before? She thinks to herself here, how men are always letting her down. Men are always leaving her. Men are rubbish. And all she wants is to fill the void left in her life. A void created by men. And then a guy hits on her, and she is quick to try and shut him down. He is persistent though, so they have a dance. And there's a larger part of this story. Part 2 will give us more on this. But in a nutshell, Jennifer Drew getting intimate with this guy will become a nightmare for her. A literal nightmare, where he melts all over her. The whole story is a Freudian metaphor for her relationships with men, and I will discuss that metaphor more in part 2. When they were dancing though, another woman at the club took Jennifer's purse by accident, thinking that it was hers. And in that purse is the Spider-Girl costume, and this woman puts that on to try and show off. I am trying to avoid stuff that is either comically misrepresenting something or that is closer to humorous evidence, but Jennifer Drew is more interested in this woman than a dirty, stinky man. She wants a better look at that exhibitionist. Since I have now offered that joke sort of proof, I'll mention the other thing. The series is set in San Francisco. I don't want to evoke stereotype or anything, but at the time, that is the sort of connection a person would make. If a character is living in San Francisco back then, a writer might have considered, or at least once thought, about the idea of them being gay. The woman falls over a balcony and Jennifer saves her. But now, as we reach the end of the issue, I want to talk overall about why I think this character being a lesbian could have been a good thing. In a previous video, I talked about this run and how it was, for a brief time, the most promising and exciting that Spider-Girl series ever got. Marky Mark J established a tone and a type of story. When I made that video, I avoided mentioning that locking down a style or a direction is all well and good, but for every creepy terror like the Needle, it doesn't matter much if the central character herself isn't anything more than a vehicle to have these stories about weirdo Night Stalker freaks in the alleyways of San Francisco. You know what would completely change that equation? If Jennifer Drew was a lesbian. If she was the first lesbian in comics. If she was the first starring character who was a lesbian. If she had these excellent stories, these oddball creeps murdering people in the dark corners of a city, and on top of all that, she was trying to understand her own sexuality, her relationships with both men and women, and at the same time, other than the setting, there is nothing tremendously cliche about her being a lesbian. Like, if you're going to say, oh yeah, but she's got dark hair, or she's a bit rude, those are not strong indicators of anything. Do I think Marky Mark J was sincerely writing this character as potentially being a lesbian? On the surface, I want to say no. But reading these comics, whenever I look at them, the emphasis put on certain lines of thought or the frequency of them, I think it is very fucking possible he was toying with it. Nowhere in the stories does he ever acknowledge an attraction to women or the existence of lesbians, but that reading improves these and makes our central character feel a lot more complex and exciting. Stories like the Travelling Community Moth one take on an entirely different life. What was once a weird issue where Spider-Girl is acting almost like a child chasing after a balloon, now it is not just that they are both insectoid-themed women. Jennifer thinks she has found someone she might be able to connect with on a deeper level. which, based on later revelations that travelling community morph is at least bisexual, might have panned out. They could have had summer after all. Her relationship with Jeremy Hunt goes from awkward to interesting. Her constant pulling away goes from being a poorly written character that is not committing to a relationship because the creators don't really know what to do with her, to now actually having some point. Without the lesbian reading, Jennifer Drew is awkward. Her relationships with any character are awkward. She is constantly pushing men away. She is fixated on befriending and chasing women. When you allow for her being lesbian, it provides a good rationalization of everything weird about how she is written. And without it, she is an, what's the word? Ungen. The French word for naive, innocent woman. Unsophisticated woman. It probably isn't pronounced that way. I think I only ever heard it said as ungen in a documentary when they were describing Sandra Dee. Anyway, this one ends with her and that guy in a car, and she is trying to rebuff his advances, and then he starts to melt. There is so much to talk about with that. Her fears of intimacy with men made manifest. But that'll be next issue. I'll tell you what, if you don't bother with the heavy amount of lesbian, this is probably not very good. Not much of a story when you remove the far richer idea that I have suggested. You know the weird thing? I am the only person in the world who has ever noticed this. In this day and age, I am the only person who has observed the queerness of Marky Mark G's Jennifer Drew. I have spent a lot of time on Google trying to find someone else, a blog somewhere, or a tweet somewhere else, where one other person has recognised the same thing as me, but they do not exist. I am the only person who has ever noticed this. Give these a read with my idea in mind. Let me know what you think. There's plenty of explanations to dispel the idea, and that is what is the canon. But by itself, I think there is a lot to support the possibility she was being written as gay. I'll give this 7 thumbs in the... No, I cannot say that. It is a clever little pun, but it isn't worth it. Think of what at a dam or reservoir you could plug with your thumb. See, not worth it, is it? It's not funny enough. It's nowhere near funny enough to potentially offend and upset thousands of people with a word. Maybe if I came up with the most brilliant bit of material ever, but a little bit of wordplay is not worth it.